You thought everything was permanent until it wasn't. You thought you had control until the ground beneath you dissolved. And now, in this moment, with everything scattered around you like broken glass, you're being asked to believe in something you can't see yet. Destiny doesn't announce itself with trumpets. It arrives in the rubble. It whispers through the cracks of what you thought was your life. When everything falls apart, you're not being punished, you're being prepared. Most people spend their entire lives building careers, building relationships, building identities, building safety. They stack brick upon brick, convincing themselves that permanence is possible, that if they just work hard enough, control enough variables, protect enough territory, nothing will ever crumble. But life doesn't work that way. Life is not interested in your illusions of control. It's interested in your evolution, and evolution requires destruction, not as cruelty, as mercy. Think about it. How many times have you held onto something that was slowly suffocating you? How many relationships have you sustained past their expiration date, convincing yourself that loyalty meant staying, even when staying meant dying a little more each day? How many versions of yourself have you defended, even when you'd outgrown them years ago? The collapse you're experiencing right now, the one that feels like failure, like loss, like the universe turning its back on you, it's not the end. It's the answer to a prayer you didn't know you were making. You've been asking for more, for deeper love, for work that matters, for a life that feels alive. But you've been asking from inside a structure that was never designed to hold that much light. You've been trying to expand within walls that were built from fear, from other people's expectations, from the person you thought you had to be to survive. And the universe, in its relentless compassion, is dismantling those walls, not to hurt you, to free you. When a seed is planted in soil, it doesn't grow immediately. First, it breaks. The shell cracks open. The structure that protected it in dormancy must be destroyed for the life inside to emerge. If the seed could think, it would probably panic. It would feel the breaking and assume it's dying. It wouldn't understand that the breaking is the beginning, that the shell was never meant to be forever, that what looks like an ending is actually an opening. You are that seed right now, and I know it doesn't feel sacred. It feels terrifying. It feels like failure. It feels like you did something wrong, like you weren't strong enough, smart enough, worthy enough to keep things together. But that's the story your fear is telling you. That's the narrative your ego has been conditioned to believe, that falling apart means you failed. When the truth is, falling apart means you're finally ready. Ready for what? For the life that's been waiting beneath the surface of the one you've been performing. For the love that can't exist in the presence of compromise. For the work that requires the version of you that you've been too afraid to become. For the destiny that's been trying to reach you but couldn't, because your hands were too full of what you were supposed to want. Let's talk about that word, destiny. It's not some mystical, predetermined script written in the stars before you were born. It's not fate, it's alignment. It's what becomes possible when you stop resisting who you actually are. When you stop shrinking, when you stop apologizing, when you stop building a life designed to make other people comfortable. Destiny is the life you could live if you were brave enough to stop betraying yourself. And here's what most people don't understand. You can't access that destiny by adding to what you already have. You can't layer your true self on top of your false one. You can't build the new life in the same space as the old one. Something has to collapse. Something has to clear. Something has to be taken away so ruthlessly, so completely, that you have no choice but to start from the truth. This is why breakdowns happen. Not because you're weak, because you're powerful. Because somewhere deep inside, beneath the fear and the conditioning and the survival patterns, a part of you knows. A part of you recognizes that you've been living too small, loving too carefully, dreaming too safely. And that part of you, the part that remembers who you were before the world told you who to be, made a choice. It chose truth over comfort. It chose growth over safety. It chose the destruction of what was familiar for the possibility of what's real. The ancient texts talk about the tower, the structure built on false foundations that must fall so something solid can be constructed. The alchemists spoke of dissolution, the stage where everything you've created must be broken down into its essential elements before transformation can occur. Carl Jung called it the dark night of the soul, the necessary descent into chaos that precedes integration. Every wisdom tradition points to the same truth. There is no rebirth without death. There is no phoenix without the fire. To celebrate your arrival, we've prepared a gift, a guide to help you navigate your inner transitions with clarity and elegance. Alignment, 7 phases of consciousness awakening. Download your copy from the link in the description. You are in the fire, and I'm not going to tell you it doesn't burn. It does. It's burning away everything that isn't you, every mask, every pretense, every version of yourself you created to survive, to please, to fit, to hide. It's burning away the relationships that were based on who you were pretending to be. It's burning away the career you built to prove something to people whose opinions don't matter. It's burning away the life you constructed from fear instead of love. And yes, it hurts. Of course it hurts. But would you rather keep that? Would you rather spend the rest of your life maintaining something that was never real? Here's what happens in the falling apart that most people miss because they're too busy panicking. Space opens. When the structure collapses, when the noise stops, when the chaos finally exhausts itself, there's space. Space you haven't had in years, maybe ever. Space to hear your own voice, space to feel your own feelings without immediately needing to fix them, explain them, or apologize for them. Space to ask the questions you've been avoiding. What do I actually want? Who am I without all of this? What would I do if I wasn't afraid? This space is sacred. This space is where destiny is rebuilt, not from ambition, not from fear, not from what you think you're supposed to do, from truth. From the quiet, unmistakable knowing that exists beneath all the programming. That voice that's been whispering to you for years, the one you kept ignoring because listening to it would mean changing everything. Now you have no choice, everything already changed. The life you were clinging to is gone. And in its absence, finally you can hear what you actually love. Not what you were taught to love, not what's impressive or safe or acceptable. What makes you feel alive? What makes time disappear? What you would do even if no one was watching, even if you never got paid, even if it made no sense to anyone but you. That's not a hobby. That's not a phase. That's a clue. That's destiny leaving breadcrumbs. You can hear what you actually need. Not what you think you should need, not what would make you seem put together, what your soul has been starving for while you fed it everything but nourishment. Maybe it's solitude, maybe it's community, maybe it's nature, maybe it's movement, maybe it's stillness, maybe it's creativity, maybe it's a complete reimagining of what success even means to you. You don't need more, you need different. And now you have permission to pursue it because the old framework is gone. You can hear who you actually are, and this is the most terrifying and most liberating part, because who you actually are is not who you've been presenting. It's not the role you've been playing. It's not the identity you've been defending. It's something wilder, stranger, more authentic, more powerful, and more vulnerable than you've allowed yourself to be. It's the version of you that exists before you edit yourself, before you perform, before you calculate how to be perceived. It's the you that doesn't fit neatly into categories, the you that makes people uncomfortable because you're too much, or not enough, or just different than they expected. That you, that's not the problem. That's the point. This is the rebuilding, not a return to what was, a rising into what's next. And it doesn't look like you think it should. It doesn't look like a plan. It doesn't look like certainty. It doesn't look like control. It looks like following your intuition, even when it makes no logical sense. It looks like saying no to things you used to say yes to because you were afraid of disappointing people. It looks like saying yes to things you used to avoid because you were afraid of failing. It looks like building a life that might not make sense to anyone on the outside, but feels unmistakably right on the inside. The people around you might not understand. In fact, they probably won't. They'll project their fears onto your transformation. They'll call it irresponsible. They'll call it selfish. They'll say you're having a breakdown when you're actually having a breakthrough. They'll want you to go back to who you were because that version was easier for them to relate to predict, to control, but you can't go back. Even if you wanted to, the person you were doesn't exist anymore. That version of you died in the collapse, and trying to resurrect it would be a betrayal of everything you've survived. Let them be confused. Let them be uncomfortable. Let them judge. Their opinions are not your instructions. Their fears are not your limits. Their inability to understand your evolution is not evidence that you're on the wrong path. It's evidence that you're on a path they're too afraid to walk themselves. And that's okay. Everyone's timing is different. Everyone's collapse looks different. You're not here to convince anyone. You're here to build. And building from this place, from the ground up, from the truth up, is different than anything you've done before. It's slower, it's humbler, it's less about impressing and more about integrity. You're not building for applause anymore. You're not building to prove something. You're building because it's yours, because it's real, because it reflects who you've become through the breaking. Some days it will feel like progress. Other days it will feel like you're back at the beginning. That's normal. Healing isn't linear. Transformation isn't a straight line. You're going to have moments where you doubt everything, where you wonder if you made a mistake, where you miss the old life even though it was killing you. Those moments don't mean you're going backwards. They mean you're human. Feel them, honor them. And then remember why you're here. Remember what the collapse cleared space for. Remember the voice you can finally hear. Because here's the truth that will carry you through. You didn't lose your destiny when everything fell apart. You found it. It was buried under all the things you thought you needed, all the identities you thought you had to maintain, all the structures you thought would keep you safe. Destiny isn't something you achieve. It's something you uncover. It's not out there, it's in here. It's been waiting for you to stop performing and start being. To stop chasing and start listening. To stop building a life that looks good and start building a life that feels true. When you look back on this time, and you will look back, you won't see it as the worst thing that ever happened to you. You'll see it as the moment everything changed. The moment you stopped living for applause and started living for alignment. The moment you stopped making yourself small and started taking up the space you were always meant to occupy. The moment you stopped betraying yourself and started building from your truth. The collapse wasn't the ending. It was the clearing. It was the universe making space for something you couldn't even imagine when you were still clinging to what was. And yes, it's terrifying. Yes, it's uncertain. Yes, it requires more courage than you knew you had. But you have it. The fact that you're still here, still breathing, still trying to make sense of it, still showing up even when you don't know what's next. That's proof. That's the evidence. That's destiny under construction. So stop looking for signs that you're on the right path. You are the sign. Your willingness to keep going when everything fell apart. Your refusal to settle back into something that doesn't fit anymore. Your commitment to building something real instead of something performative. That's not luck, that's not coincidence. That's not even bravery, that's recognition. That's your soul saying yes to what it's always known. That you were made for more than maintenance, that you were made for transformation. That you were made for a life so aligned, so authentic, so unapologetically yours that it couldn't exist in the structure that collapsed. Everything fell apart, and everything is being rebuilt, not the way it was, the way it's meant to be, not from fear, From truth, not for approval, for alignment, not because you have to, because you finally can. This is your destiny under construction. And it doesn't look like you thought it would. It looks better. It looks real. It looks like you. If this resonated with something in you, if it named what you've been feeling but couldn't articulate, don't just let it pass through. Let it land. Like and subscribe. Not for me, not for the algorithm, but for you. For the version of you that's being rebuilt. Because every time you align with truth, you make it easier for the next person to do the same. You become permission. You become proof that the collapse isn't the end, it's the beginning. And what's being built from the rubble is nothing short of destiny itself.